G'day and welcome to Tuesday's episode of Kenty Blitz, your afternoon hit of rugby league news from Monday to Thursday. Kenty, thought we'd start with a good news story, given it's been a bit of a week of upheaval. Reggie the Rabbit will be running out tomorrow night against Penrith.
Yeah.
They were able to kiss and make up with that Cronulla family.
Yeah, look, I thought it was all in a teacup, to be honest. I think, look, he didn't do the right thing, but look, he's an 81-year-old man. He's very generous with his time. He has been for decades for that club.
I think he's been doing it for like nearly 30 years.
Yeah. He took over the original Reggie the Rabbit, who used to live under the grandstand at Redfern Oval. True story. He lived under the grandstand at Redfern Oval. He wasn't allowed to live there. Council ever found out he was going to be kicked out. So that's where the original Reggie was. But this Reggie's been doing it for a long, long time. Did the wrong thing. But I can kind of understand, Tom, when you're in that big costume, your vision's limited. 81 years old, you could feel probably a little bit vulnerable. So I can understand apparently the kids were told not to touch him and reached out anyway. So
the thing I liked about it was you could have seen it being in some of the stuff that there's overreactions to at the moment. We saw the baseball bat in Vegas. You could have seen it being blown up, but he apologised. Everyone just moves on, which is very good.
Well, that's the way the world used to be. Now you've got to go in front committees and talk to people, and there's threats made and all these, soft bloody reactions to things.
Well, it's good to see a good news story and a union between Reggie the Rabbit and that Cronulla family. Speaking of unions, big news today is that Dylan Walker has signed with the Eels effective immediately.
Yeah. That's good news, isn't it? I think it's an interesting one. Look, the Warriors have come out and said Dylan wanted to return back to Australia. They've allowed him to do that. Look, that doesn't always happen just because somebody wants to shift locations. Essentially, what's happened is I think Parramatta have realised there's a few problems probably going on at the club. Obviously, Moses is out for some time. There is speculation, a little bit of scuttlebutt around, Tom, that Moses might be out longer than what we first anticipated. It's a foot injury, which can be troublesome because they're so delicate feet. It's all fine muscles and fine tendons and bones in there that when you have foot problems, they can take longer. Not a lot of blood flow to that part of the foot also, I'm led to believe. So it could take longer than what you first anticipate. So Parramatta probably realised they've got a problem in the halves, that they certainly need depth there. But Dylan Walker will really bring some like a bit of finesse to the place. He's an energy player. He's played halves plenty of times in his career, and he'll bring that just what Parramatta need there, just a little bit of experience and understanding.
What do you reckon about, I saw Nathan Hindmarsh came out yesterday or maybe the day before and suggested that maybe the Eels should ditch Dylan Brown. Now that Dylan Walker comes in, I mean, he is a viable option to play six.
Well, that sort of dovetails into that. Johnny Elias actually said that on Primetime a couple of weeks back, that they should look at moving Brown on. And it's starting to get some legs now because he still hasn't performed very well for Parramatta at all in all three games. They are lost in direction. They brought in Hawkins on the weekend, who I thought did a pretty good job, but they're still very short. Dylan Brown is really revealing himself as not a playmaker, as not an organising half, not a guy who can get up in front and lead a team. He's essentially a running pivot, and that's how he's still trying to play the game. Walker's not a great organiser himself from the point of view. He's not that classic mould, but he certainly understands how to get the team around a little bit. And it sort of adds weight, doesn't it, to this idea that Parramatta might be going, you know what? If you're going to go to Newcastle next year, we're not going to continue your development. And I kind of get that. That's happened in the past, years and years and years ago, before it was so common, players leaving clubs. Justin Hodges was playing, a young kid coming up on the way through at the Broncos. He signed to play with the Roosters. Wayne Bennett just put him back in the reserve grade, left him there. Okay, and that was what happened. He said, I'm not going to continue to put my work into you and develop you if you're going to go and put your best foot forward for another club. The side effect of when he did that, Bennett, there's a couple of other young players, Corey Parker and Brent Tate, were coming through and were fielding offers from rival clubs. And when they saw Hodges go back to reserve grade, they quickly put their negotiations to rest and ended up staying at the club and having great careers at the club. So there is a sort of method to the madness. I would applaud Jason Ryles actually if he did come out and do that. It'd be fascinating if he said, you know what, Dylan Brown, we're not going to contribute to your advancement as a player. We're going to put you back in reserve grade. And in some respects, if Parramatta lose this weekend, it's virtually impossible that they're going to make the 8. Okay, they're going to be spotting teams 4 games, which is a lot to catch up, even though it doesn't sound a lot.
It's not like they've lost to the big clubs either.
Well, exactly. Like they haven't.
I mean, sorry, the Storm smacked them in round 1, but they smacked them. You know what I mean? It's not like we've seen them get
put
smacked.
46 on at half time.
Yeah.
So forget about the second half there. The Storm went to sleep.
I would have been punished
half.
in the comments there if I'd not remembered that one, that it was the Storm round 1.
Keep those comments coming, please. Look, I think it'd be pretty brave of Riles to do it, but I tell you what, I think it would make an impact at the club.
I kind of like the idea of some of the coaches binding together, and when these crazy mid-year transfers get announced or club changes, the coaches just go, well, you know what, see you later. And maybe if we see it happen a couple of times, we're going to see a few less of these changes where a player says they're not going to be there at the end of the year, and it's the first 5 rounds of the season.
Well, you put it this way too, the Parramatta. You say to Jason, if Jason Riles says to Dylan Brown, mate, we're going to put you back in reserve grade. You're going to stay there. You're going to play State Cup the rest of this season. The immediate effect of that is Brown won't like it. Parramatta fans might be up in arms the fact that they're going to lose a player who might help them win, but given where the season is already, the season might already be over. Now, you don't want to surrender the rest of the season. I understand that. But by the same token, you don't want to contribute to his development as a player. And you also want to say to the other guys who are still at the club, mate, we're going to start blooding you guys. We're going to start giving you a bit of a taste of NRL football and get you ready for the future. So there's a lot of upsides for that. And the other part to it, though, is if they did say that to Brown, what might then happen is he might say, well, I'm not going to play State Cup. Let's try and work out a release deal. Parramatta pay an X amount of money. That'll then help get rid of him straight away. He can go to Newcastle for whatever's left. They don't have a lot of money there, to be honest, in their cap room. But he can go there for the rest of this season, keeps him playing NRL football, gets him where he wants to be and where he's heading anyway, and Parramatta can use that money that they saved to essentially start planning for next year. So, look, there's a lot to be said for it. I think it still might happen. Given this latest development of Walker going to Parramatta, it shows that the Eels have been a little bit active in that market, and so they've certainly got their head in that direction.
You talked about Mitch Moses. Last year, he was obviously outstanding in rep footy. He kind of, effectively, he was the reason New South Wales won that game 3. But the Eels barely saw him. So if you're an Eels fan, you're looking at this season, you're going, well, he could be out till around 8, 9, 10, and then it's Origin time again. So potentially they lose him into Origin, and obviously Origin's so physical, he's every chance of getting injured the way that he goes.
Yeah, look, at the moment he won't be picked for. He'll certainly be in the Origin squad, but Cleary will be the Origin halfback. But he's going to have a couple of games under his belt to get picked for Origin. I don't know when he's back. I understand.
They picked him out of nowhere last year, effectively.
Yeah, but they didn't have Cleary. So, but look, this time though, you're right though. They could pick him. 9-10. It's not going to give him a lot of time to be ready for Origin, but it's also going to have Parramatta season. It's more than a third past. More than a third will be over of the season. So. They are going to have a tough time of the Eels if they don't get that sorted.
Because of how good he was in Origin last year, Mitch Moses, you feel like if this season passes him by with an injury, it's a bit of a shame for rugby league because he is a really good player and we're effectively going to lose him for 2 years of his prime. Yeah,
well, that's injuries though, isn't it? Yeah, that's happened to a lot of players in the past. No one wants to see him get injured, but it happens and you've just got to go away and deal with it.
Now, if Dylan Brown does get the chop, potentially we could see Dylan Brown against Daly Cher Evans in reserve grade then.
No, we won't be seeing that. Look, it's interesting, isn't it, what's happening at Manly? So the Manly club, they're angry about what's happened. They're upset about it. I understand that Scott Penn, the owner, is not real happy with Tony Mestroff, the CEO. And it's just starting to come out a little bit too, Tom, that things aren't quite as chummy at Manly as they're trying to portray it to be. I didn't read much into the fact that Seabold wasn't invited to DCE's wedding last year, but I am told that there is an unhappiness there that has driven his desire to get out of the club. I've been told it's a little bit wider than just him too. That there's a couple of players unhappy with the direction the club or the way the club's operating at the moment. So. I don't know whether this is enough, though, to sort of reveal those risks and sort of make the cracks any wider. But it will be interesting to see how the club responds to this and how they react. I'll say this: the players as a group are very solid. They are unified together, so that they are all on the same page. I think they'll understand what Cherry Evans has done. I actually think some of them really understand it, if that makes sense. They understand why he wants to get out of the club.
I was going to say, if I'm a coach or if I'm in front office and I see someone like Cherry Evans, the captain of my club, leave and the players almost rally behind him, that's concerning.
Well, it certainly indicates problems. The good clubs, are always operating, and they go from chairman to chief executive to coach to captain, and they're all in the same line. They're all aligned, going same direction. I don't know if Manly quite is at the moment. I think there's certainly a bit of a feeling among players that things could be better at the club from an overall point of view.
It feels like a full-blown bungle the more you look at it, because if you do compare, and these comparisons are going to keep happening because of the nature of the players, but if you compare the way that Cooper Cronk left Melbourne, a lot of dignity, Melbourne rallied around him. They, honoured and celebrated the time that he'd had there. With this Daly Evans going on TV without telling the Pens or Mestrov on Monday night, like, it's a complete shambles if you compare the two ways the clubs have dealt with these situations.
And I think that's indicative of the problem, Manly, and certainly of the gap that I'm learning about at the club between the playing group and DC in particular and the club and the bosses there. The fact that he openly on air in live television rejected the offer.
Respectfully, though.
Respectfully. But didn't even think about it. It wasn't even oh, wow, that's news to me. I'll have to think about that. The fact that straight out of hand, he just said, no, won't be taking it. That's significant. And I don't know how Manly are going to sort of navigate their way through this. It's going to be interesting to see how they handle this. It's going to be interesting to see what happens once Cherry Evans decides where he's going to go. He's copped a lot of criticism of people for making that decision now, okay? He's done the right thing. I don't get... Right now, he's given Manly notice that he's leaving. He's giving them time to get out in the market now and find a replacement halfback or a replacement captain, all of that next year. And he's left a significant chunk of salary cap money there for them to spend that on. If he'd done it the other way and protected himself and said, okay, I'll sign elsewhere, but I won't tell Manly till the end of the season, who half don't know whether I want to play on next year or don't know whether I'm going to retire at the end of this season. If he waited till the end of the season to make that decision and told the club at the end of the season, okay, I'm going to play for whoever now, they would have had no time to get out in the market and find a replacement. They would have had that money sitting there with nothing to do with it. So I don't understand the criticism of him from that point of view. He's done the right thing. He's made the decision, I think, as soon as he knew where he was going. I think he knows where he's going. I don't think he's telling us. And I think that's why he's made the decision now, because he's clear in his head about where he's going to go.
Very interesting. How much do we read into the next couple of weeks? So Manly play Parramatta, Melbourne, the Sharks and the Dragons in the next 4 games. We're talking about whether the cracks are going to be exposed at Manly. And a lot of what we're talking about isn't necessarily in the playing group. It's more the playing group's reaction to things that are happening above them in front office. But are we going to be looking at them closely over the next 4 rounds to see whether some of this stuff is true?
Of course we are. Look, we're going to look at this the same way we looked at Parramatta in the opening rounds when Dylan Brown announced he was leaving. And everybody's put a magnifying glass over his performance. And to be fair, he hasn't answered that. Okay, we're still waiting for rugby league fans. When I say we, Eels fans particularly, are waiting for him to step up in a game, take control, and show everybody what Newcastle have seen. Because the Eels don't want it in 5 years' time; they want it now. The Eels fans want it now. So everybody's waiting for that. We've been looking for that. What we're seeing now is Cherry Evans has taken over the lead role in the soap opera, and everybody's going to be watching what's happening there. As I said, I don't think there's any rifts in the playing groups. I think the players are pretty solid with each other, but I don't think things are as smooth from the playing group towards head office, and that could have a problem. The coaching situation, I think it's just managed at the moment. I don't think there's a great affinity there. I think it's just managed with okay, you're the coach, I'm the player. I'll do what you tell me to do, and that's as far as it goes.
A lot of interesting comments coming through in the YouTube channel last night. And the thing I was surprised most by, and I think it was pleasing, was that there's not really any hate for DCE yet amongst fans. I think there was a bit of talk last night about will he get booed when he next runs out at Brookvale, but people seem to be thinking that he has done the right thing. I thought an interesting question was from Ramifications with a Z, double Z, Ramifications ZZ. And he asked, do you think DCE isn't repaying the club for his services after all these years? Because he made the point that in 2011, a number of Manly players took pay cuts that ultimately saw them have the playing group to then go on and win a premiership. So is DCE going out on his own here by not kind of taking a similar route?
Oh, you can make that argument, but I don't think it's strictly about money now. I think, players did do that. Players have done that at various clubs over the years. One thing you've got to have a club you think is ready to do that. DCE doesn't have a lot of time right now to make that a reality. He's got this season and then probably 2 seasons at best after that. He's 36, remember. He starts next year at 37 and he'll start the following year at 38, which will make him the oldest ever NRL player. So he doesn't have a lot of time to sit there and hope that Manly get it right, hope that Manly get the premiership squad right, get their recruitment right, get all that ready and have them in a place to challenge. Even though I would say they're not far off it right now, they are pretty close to where they need to be. They could get it right, they might not get it right. Does he owe the... I don't sort of tend to buy into this, does he owe the club? My understanding and my experience, to be fair, is it doesn't matter how many years you give someone. If they think it's time to move you on, they'll move you on. So
just ask Mitch Pearce and the Roosters.
Well, exactly. You know what I mean. So he doesn't owe them from that point of view. He's been paid well, but he's also performed well.
I saw Victor Radley on 360 last night actually said, I feel like I owe the club everything, but the club doesn't owe me anything.
Yeah, well, that's terrific that he thinks that, and the club would love that, but he doesn't. That's not right. He doesn't owe the club any more than they owe him.
I was having to think about the reaction to this so far, and one of the things that struck me is that because it's such big news, everyone is jumping to DCE's a champion. You'd be mad not to sign him. I even read that Penrith should consider it the champion club that they are. But I do think we should pause and just think about the fact that he is 36. If I think about the last champion player who was playing at that age at halfback, Jonathan Thurston, one season he was Jonathan Thurston, and then the next season, his last year, he came back and he was half a gallop short of Jonathan Thurston. So everyone is quick to say someone's got to pick up DCE, but do we actually pause and go, you know what, it might not be a great buy? Yeah,
you can say that. Look... The one thing about getting older is eventually you lose. Okay, so you can't maintain.
It's a race none of us can win. Father Time.
That's exactly it. But I think I think the way his body is held up, I think he's a big halfback. He was a big halfback when he came through. He's not the fastest halfback I've seen, but he's got good speed. He hasn't lost a lot of that speed, if any. He's still very fit. He's in good shape, and he doesn't miss games through many injuries. So from all of that, that's why I don't buy into that. Like. Yeah, Thurston came back and his last season, I think he battled and I wasn't up to the standard of his previous years that he'd performed. And it does get players. We see all sorts of players go 1 year too many. Very, very few times are they the champions and have the introspection or the observation on him that what we would put on the champions. But Cherry Evans... I think he's a valuable buy. I still think he's gonna be worthwhile, and I think Manly fans are acknowledging that. Look, it's crazy saying he's going to Penrith or anywhere like that. He's not going to go to Penrith. At the moment, you've got the Bulldogs are in it. They are having a quiet look at him. They'll do that. If they miss him, they'll say they were never interested. Because
Gus special.
That's a Gus special. Yeah. We never seriously had a look at him. So George Illawarra have already distanced themselves from him, said that they're not that keen. You never know what you're going to get out of Des. The answer's a pineapple there, but Des is he'll be having a look at him and just sort of seeing. I think what Cherry wants to do. The Dolphins have already indicated that they have got cap room and that they are very interested in him. But I still think, without knowing anything about the Roosters, I still think the Roosters are the favourites, given what I said about it yesterday and just how the Roosters think. And the fact that Cherry Evans is some sort of suggestion, Cherry Evans as early as December had already, I think, made up his mind that he was going to leave the club, which would suggest to me that somebody was talking to him already then.
If we could get some CCTV footage of Nick's Cafe in Darlinghurst near the BMW dealership, it'd be interesting to see if a hooded Daly Tree Evans walked in there at some point in December.
It'd be interesting. It's the table in the corner if anyone wants to hide a camera there. So table in the corner, reserved for Nick Politis. No one else is allowed to sit there.
Mate, it will be pretty weird to see DCE in different colours if that is indeed what happens. It's kind of gone both ways. There's some legend players who've changed colours at the end of their career. We've talked at length about what happened with Cooper Cronk, but if you look at the other end of the spectrum, you've got Wally Lewis who went to the Gold Coast and it didn't work out so well.
Yeah, look, it's funny, isn't it? I've tried to go through today and find some players who made late changes in their career for premierships. Lottie Takiri did it. He had 1 year at South. They won the premiership. Luke O'Donnell actually came back from England. Playing for Huddersfield over there.
He came back looking even better than he looked when he went over.
He looked he's a good style of bloke. You should see him now. He looks even better now. But he came back and had one season at the Roosters when they won the comp in 2013. So there are these players clubs just bring in just to polish off the roster to try and just that last little bit of touch of class to get them in position to win a premiership, which again points me to why I think the Roosters. Cherry Evans will do that wherever he goes. I don't think he'll go to a club like St George Illawarra because I don't think his last 2 seasons of football, why would you want to go to a club where you're battling to make a team contenders?
Yeah, I mean, he's leaving a club in a premiership window right now. Sure, they may not be a premiership favourite, but they're certainly there or thereabouts.
Well, they're entering the window, aren't they? Yeah. So I don't think he'll go to a struggling club. I think he'll go to a club that he thinks can contend in the first season he's there, which is next year. Roosters right now, we wait and see. But it can go both ways. Wally Lewis had a storied career and finished up playing last couple of seasons at the Gold Coast, which really, poor old Wall, it finished him as a footballer because he was he was a different class than them. They just couldn't keep up with what he was trying to do on the football field. And so therefore he was too good for them and they couldn't get the results. That does happen sometimes. Players will go on; they'll take a big paycheck to go to another club as a superannuation check, so to speak. But the football doesn't work out. I think they've got a little bit smarter about that these days. They understand that the last thing you want to do is give yourself 1 or 2 really tough seasons, knock yourself around just before you go into retirement. So again, I don't think he'll do that. I think he'll go to a club that's going to benefit him as much as he benefits them.
My favourite is Glenn Lazarus going to the Storm. He was an iconic player at 2 clubs and then finished it at the Storm. And who can forget the photo of him holding up that bloody heavy, that trophy, holding it up with one arm when they won in 99.
Yeah, it's I only played him in premierships at 3 different clubs, Glenn Lazarus, which is pretty significant. Him and Chris Anderson didn't talk. There you go. There's some trivia for you.
Really?
Yeah, they're off each other.
The whole season?
You listen to his acceptance speech. He can be a bit of a grumpy bugger, old Lazo. I like Lazo, but he's a grumpy bugger. Everyone knows he's retiring. Gives his farewell speech on the dais, and thanks every coach he's had in his career except Chris Anderson, who was the coach of the Melbourne at the time.
It's like the famous story when Fatty Vaughton they won Show of the Year or something like that, and Tony, what's his name, was across the road. I think might have been Steve Crawley was across the table, and he said he thanked everyone in Channel 9, the whole building, didn't thank Crawley, and then Crawley took him outside.
Well, it got a little blood boiled a little bit that day.
I think the one thing that you're in a good position to talk about, which, it's kind of been mentioned, but I think a few people in the media, particularly in Fox Sports, can't really go into this topic, but there is a lot of talk about the power of player managers and the fact that the Isaac Moses, Joe Weeby situation behind the scenes has had an impact on what's going on at Manly. How powerful are these blokes at the moment in rugby league?
Well, they're powerful. They're very powerful. And the reason is because contracts mean nothing. Okay, we saw David Clemmer start the season as a Tiger and he's off to St George Illawarra by round 2. We've now seen Dylan Walker after 3 rounds. He's just played on the weekend for the Warriors, and next jersey he wears is going to be Parramatta. The thing about it is player managers are never at rest, okay? So, and because clubs are a constantly changing environment with players being injured, players getting hurt, players falling out of favour, players who hadn't been anticipated as a rising star, suddenly push through, they'll push someone else into the background. It's always changing. And it's like the stock market. It's up and down and everywhere. But what happens out of that is the priorities of the clubs change. Now, in the old days, you would sit there and go, well, we've got this guy for 2 more years. What are we going to do? We're going to have to put up with him or whatever. Now what they do, though, the player managers are very good at finding out where the weaknesses are at a club. And if a club, for example, if Parramatta needed a playmaker, given Mitch Moses' injuries and given Dylan Brown's shyness at the moment, the way he's playing.
To put it lightly.
The Parramatta are looking for something for like a bit of a Band-Aid for that position.
Mm.
So a manager at some point has had a conversation with someone, and then suddenly he talks to Dylan Walker, mate, would you be interested in going there? Yeah, I'll come home.
Mm.
The offer's put to the Warriors. Now, the Warriors have their own motivations. He's probably not the player that they first bought when they got him over there. So for them to let him go, yeah, mate, you go with our good graces because you're no longer the player we bought. You're not, you're still earning the money we put you on.
Mm.
So it helps them as well that they get that money back now. There's some sort of financial arrangement made between the two clubs where both are comfortable with the decision. If neither's comfortable or one of them's not comfortable, you just don't make the deal. So they make a deal, but the managers are always poking and prodding around this, and they're always. I don't think contracts. That's why everyone talks about 10 years is too long for Dylan Brown. There's every chance you might not see that out.
Mm.
So they're always changing. People talk about whether we make them, once you sign a contract, you've got to stay in it. I don't think you can do that because circumstances sometimes legitimately change other than what you might just want a pay rise.
Mm.
So that's one reason you can't just say a hard and fast rule that they have to stick. The other part, do we go to trade windows? Well, again, that makes everybody happy, okay, because there's a certain period. We tried certain times in the past, not necessarily a trade window, but certain periods where they were allowed to negotiate. And it turned into a farce.
Mm.
There's clearly negotiations going on when they shouldn't have been going on. There's negotiations going on now when they shouldn't be going on. At the moment, under the rules, you're not allowed to talk to a contracted player unless he's in the final season of his deal. Okay, but
if you do go to Uncle Nick's cafe, who knows?
Well, it's not only Uncle Nick though; it's every club though, Tom. To be fair,
but just on that example,
yeah, exactly. But that's the thing. And so what happens though is if you've still got 2 years to run. You just say to your manager, or your manager more likely will bring it to you, so-and-so are interested.
Mm.
Would you like to go there? They're offering this. And the one thing about managers is if they can find a deal where you're going to get paid more, they will encourage you to take the deal because that gives them a pay rise as well because they're taking a percentage of your wage. So they're always on the go for more money. That's, I don't want to call them used car salesmen, but...
You just did.
I just did. No, I will say this. There are some good ones, okay? But there are some that...
Obviously, our good friend Chimes.
Well, look, I like most of them, to be fair. And to be fair, their whole job is to look after the player. They're not there to look after a club. They're there to look after their player.
Mm.
They're not there to look after a team.
Mm.
Again, it's their player.
Mm.
They are almost always doing the right thing for the player. Where I get the shits a little bit with managers is when I think they've done it a player because the player's the one paying their wages and they shouldn't be doing it. And at times it does happen. And generally when it does happen, it's because it's to benefit another player that they probably also represent who's earning more money.
The interesting thing about this Weeby bloke is he's not actually an accredited agent. He does have his agency, Ignite Sports Agency, and I think his son is accredited, but they call him the football whisperer, and he's an advisor to DCE, Tedesco, Tom Travojevic, and a number of others. But whatever a football whisperer is, we'll have to get into that another time. We've talked a lot about...
He still gets his 6% though.
We've talked a lot about off-field stuff for the last couple of days. Obviously, round 4 just around the corner, so we'll have to dig right into that tomorrow. If you are enjoying Kenty Blitz and, of course, Kenty Primetime, make sure you subscribe on YouTube or Spotify, wherever you are listening to us. Hopefully we're getting to some footy tomorrow, Kenty, but it's been a big week. I'm a bit knackered from it.
Look, I really enjoy it. We'll get into a bit of footy tomorrow.
You never know, though. Who knows what's going to happen in the next 24 hours?
Well, who knows? But the way the world's going at the moment, could be anything that's happening. And just quickly to Kenty Primetime this week, Graham Arnold. The former Socceroo coach.
And South's kicking coach.
And South's kicking coach, yeah. So we go to all the big names.
What does he know about a grubber, Graham Arnold? Because
he's very good as the goal kicking. Yeah, he talks about actually how he.
Apparently, a good goal kicker kicks down on the ball. You don't need to scoop it.
No, that's golf.
We'll find out with Graham Arnold. Tune in to Kenty Primetime. See you tomorrow for some more footy chat. Thanks, guys.